Hello and welcome to another classic science fiction, sci-fi fantasy, SFF, something like that review for a surprising book for me in a lot of ways. From my point of view, it's a fairly obscure author and a fairly obscure book. Turns out, not so much. The Long Tomorrow by Leigh Brackett. Only not. It's Leigh Brackett. I've been pronouncing it Leigh Brackett for decades, since in my teens. I've also never met in real life anyone else who's ever read any of their books. I was relieved to find out that the internet agrees with me that she was indeed a female. I've had a few shocks like that recently. And I hadn't thought of Leigh Brackett for some years. I used to really enjoy The Ginger Star, and I think I've read another of her novels. But sometime last year I was watching a book-pilled video where he mentions this book, and lo and behold, the very one pops up next time I'm looking through a rather obscure little shed that sells books not too far away from me on the Gold Coast. It's a beautiful old edition. So you've got the same image front and back, only the front includes what's under the mountain, as it were. It's a science fiction print from Ballantine, and it is in really good condition. It is still in really good condition even after me carrying it around for a few days. And it is a 1955 edition. The first printing was 1954. So yeah, early book, good condition, pretty proud of it, pretty happy with it, really enjoyed reading it. So I don't know if I have read The Long Tomorrow before or not. I know I really liked Leigh Brackett when I was young, and I read everything of theirs that I could find. I don't think I could find that much. And I always thought of them as a fairly obscure author with fairly obscure books, except maybe for The Ginger Star. Not so. In America, apparently they're really well known. Of all the science fiction reviews that I can find on BookTube, there are dozens for this one. I haven't watched any of them yet. I'm going to review it first, and then this evening I'm going to dive into a whole lot of what other people thought about it. I expect it to be quite different. So this is a post-apocalyptic novel. At the time when it came out, it was, I think, reviewed more speculative fiction than science fiction. Even by the standards of 1955, when it was being reviewed, there is science, but it's mostly at the end for a while. And the science that is in it seems pretty tame by 2024 science fiction standards, but for 1955, I actually think it was very visionary. What really makes this book stand out, though, is the writing, the characterization, the plot, the story progression. All these are beautifully written. So as I was reading it, I thought this is almost more a work of literature, of American literature, than it is of science fiction. And apparently a lot of people agree with me because it was on some 100 list of American literature or science fiction or something. It is very, very American. So it makes sense that it is well known in America, but less so elsewhere. So I'm going to start out saying things that I don't think are really, really spoilery. At the end, I'm probably going to spoiler more, but I'll warn you before I start. So this book has what I felt were three distinct parts. And it starts in a small town called Piper's Run, where two cousins, Len and Esau, are living in the New Memnite community. Now, I'm not quite clear what a Memnite was. I was going to Google that before I started this review, but I haven't. I know it's some form of Christianity that really exists in America. I have the feeling that they're a bit like Amish or Quakers or something like that. Very deny all science, technology, and industry type. And in any such community, you're going to have people who push against it, who want more information, who don't want to be beaten for asking questions, that sort of thing. And that is kind of Len and Esau. it's not that they're full on rebellion, but they're not as obedient as they could be to the strictures of their community. This first bit, I think, is brilliant. It starts out, they're at a fair, and the two boys sneak out to listen to preaching by a group that aren't the same type of Christianity as them, but they're still a type of some other type of Christianity that's sideways from them. But many people in their community have actually listened to this preacher. A man ends up being stoned to death, and this is a good way for the author to develop the fact that the thing that Esau and Len are interested in is actually very dangerous. It creates that feeling of threat from within their own experience that I thought was really well done. Now, after they get back home, their little adventure at the preacher's is known, and they're punished for it. But it doesn't stop them from questioning. And this early part really develops beautifully all the nice things about communities where you've got a sense of community, you know everyone, you're living a comfortable, healthy, good life. This part of the book really manages to highlight the beauty and the comfort in that style of life from the inside of a person who is questioning it. Now, Len really isn't as much of a questioner as Esau. Esau is really the rebellious one, but Len is the stronger of the two in many regards, though his cousin wouldn't agree on that. Len is one of those sorts of people who question things. They want more information. They want to know. And throughout this book, there's ongoing questioning that he has. It's like he talks about the different sorts of people, like his brother James, who never questions anything and is perfectly happy. I think his brother's called James, and is perfectly happy in his community and his life, and just accepts it all. Then you've got Esau, who accepts nothing, but despite that rebellion, doesn't actually seek to go into the heart of things in the way that Len does. Len can't really not look into the heart of things, not want to learn more. And so this early part is quite golden in the beauty of describing things. I really respect what Leigh Brackett did there. Now, this part of the novel comes to an end when it turns out that Esau has actually stolen a radio, a completely prescribed type of technology. And and then they steal some books to try and make the radio work. And when this is discovered, Len and Esau are very badly punished, and Len leaves. He takes Esau with him. Up to that now, it's been pretty much Esau who's leading the challenge, and Len sort of tags along in his wake. And certainly Len's father thinks that's the way it is. But at the end of the day, when they leave their community, Piper's Run, it's Len who is the motivating force there. It's like he's just sort of had enough of being punished for questioning things. And his stubbornness, I suppose, has been invoked. Now, the next part is what I think of as the middle part of the book, is Len and Esau are in a town. They've left Piper's Run. They've travelled around a fair bit. We hear a little bit about their travels. But now they're in this town. They've got a bit of a good wicket. And here we learn more about the society restrictions. And the society restrictions are intense. So on the cover, I think it says, the Constitution of the United States, 30th Amendment, no city, no town, nor community of more than 1,000 people or 2,200 buildings to the square mile shall be built or permitted to exist anywhere in the United States of America. My bird wants to check out the book. Very interesting, hey? Yes. And this amendment is interesting because it's the only part of the Constitution that is ever mentioned in any sense. And there isn't any central government anymore, and there isn't any sort of central regulation, and there isn't any sort of centralization at all. And this seems to be the only part of the Constitution that in any way anyone is interested in. Certainly killing people by stoning to death is okay, and I'm pretty sure that isn't in the Constitution of America. So anyway, that's interesting. Anyway, they're living in this town. A guy wants to build extra warehouses, and this causes a catalysm of catastrophic events that ends up with more people dying and a whole heap of arson and violence. At the end of which, we enter the third part. So the whole journey has been after Barterstown. The guy who got stoned to death right at the beginning was stoned to death because he was meant to come from Barterstown. And Len and Esau's fathers claim there's no such place, and probably there never was, and they should give up. But they get this idea that Barterstown is where technology from the old world, before the cities were devastated by nuclear fire, still exists, and they've been searching for it the whole time. Now, in this last part, they do actually find that Barterstown is real, and they get there. And so the last part of the book is very much their experiences there and after. I think of it as three separate ones. It's not as if it's been an amalgam of three stories. It's very much a continuous story, and the writing is continuous and very good throughout. So I suppose that the time after they reached Barterstown was exceptionally good and unexpected, because in 2024, post-apocalyptic is everywhere, and it normally comes with dystopian. There's always bad guys, and the restriction is always a malignant plan which your protagonist has to fight against. This isn't like that at all. This is about societies. This is about people and what they do. So it feels much more layered, much more nuanced, and much more, to me, interesting than a lot of post-apocalyptic can be. So I would thoroughly recommend it for the great writing and the interesting speculations that it has about possible post-apocalyptic scenarios. I think they're more relevant to 1955 than they are to 1925, which is, I know it's 24, but we're pretty close to 25. Okay, what do you want? So the era in which it was written comes through, but because we're talking about a future scenario, then it hasn't dated as badly as some 1955 books have. It is very, very American, and the entire plot pretty much revolves around the weird, evolved styles of Christianity that have come to the civilized world, and they are the baseline of all the communities. We don't see any person who isn't Christian or any person who hasn't been contaminated by these weird types of religion. Even in Barterstown, they're Christian, and they've got this heaven and hell thing happening. Excellent book, I do recommend, and now I'm going to start spoilering. So if you think you're going to read this book and you don't think you want to hear me complaining about it or spoilering it or whatever, I don't think they're going to be huge spoilers, and it's an old book, but up to you. Okay, so I really like the juxtaposition of the start when you've got Esau and Len chafing against the restrictions of being forced to stay in Piper's Run and to believe what they're told to believe, and no larger world is offered these boys. They have to be there, they have to bow down and do what their community tells them to do. And then at the end, when they get to Bartertown, you've got Jean, who's chafing against the restrictions in her community and wanting to escape in exactly the same way they had. Only they wanted to escape to Barterstown, and she wants to escape from. Now, in a way, I don't find that incredibly surprising, because this was published in 1955, and future post-apocalyptic or not, girls still wear skirts, and their only roles appear to involve housework and breeding. So I can well see why Jean or any other girl would want to escape from that. But that is not the theme of this book. If it was written today, it would, and she'd turn into a girl boss. But it's written in 1955. This is about real people in their era. And I think that's really quite intoxicating compared to a lot of more modern writing. After they reached Barterstown, I thought it was really sad that all the learning that Len so badly wanted, that made him leave his family, who he loved and respected. Esau hated his family and hated the town, but Len didn't. He enjoyed the town. He just wished that he was someone who could live there happy and unquestioning. He couldn't, so he left. And his goal was always Bartonstown. Bartonstown. I started off thinking that it was called Bartertown because it was a centre of barter, but it ends up being Barton. Well, it's named after some guy, and I think it's Bartonstown. No, it's still Barterstown, but Barter apparently was a guy who built it. Yes, okay, Barterstown. They reach Barterstown. There's not really any education given him and Esau. There's just some vague reference about he can use the library, and it talks about him reading books. Len strikes me as a perfect model of a character who could be really, really in-depth examining cultures and people and their motivations. And I think he's a bit of a wasted resource that at the end of the book he hasn't. Maybe he does in the future. If there's a sequel, maybe that would be it. But yeah, there isn't. So Len was a really good character. I enjoyed the way after they came to Bartertown, the great expose is both the boys are taken. There aren't many people that come to Bartertown. Mostly the people who live there. They guard their secrets incredibly possessively. Very few people are allowed to approach except for trading. Very few people are taken in. Len and Esau only make it because they had an established relationship with the Bartonstown's man who was posing as a trader and has known them pretty much their whole lives. And so when they get there, first of all, they just see a community that could be any community anywhere. And then they are indoctrinated into the secrets. Has basically got this hill that's been tunneled into. Pre-apocalyptically, it was made into a nuclear reactor and research station with a computer. If you want 1955 descriptions of how they believe computers are going to be, this one's called Clementine, and I have to say this was a brilliant, brilliant scenario. One of the more interesting, elaborate, and focused descriptions of futuristic computers by authors from the 50s. Really enjoyed it. It's not a big part of the plot, but it is significant. But throughout this, we see all these secrets, but the secrets aren't really terribly integrated into the day-to-day life. Their day-to-day life in Bartertown is very similar to the day-to-day life outside of Bartertown, except that they have this huge secret which they guard. And throughout, Len is essentially wrestling with his own morality and his own worldview. And once they reach Bartertown and him and Esau are set to working in the mountain, that comes to the fore for him. Esau has basically achieved his goal, which is Bartertown. He's now involved in machinery and its steam technology, and he's going to be learning about radio, and he has no further questions. He is where he wants to be, and that's it. Len continues to question. And then he gets together with Jean, and they escape and start journeying back towards Piper's Run. Throughout this, he's essentially testing his beliefs and his vision of the world outside. And he himself examines the fact that he's trying to get back to Piper's Run to say to his father, "You were right, I shouldn't have questioned anything." And he slowly comes to realize throughout that trip that what he's actually trying to do is recover his own innocence in a way that can't be done, because innocence is lost and then it's gone. So in the end, he and Jean do end up, we assume, going back to Barterstown and participate in the great scheme of things. The idea is to find a way to protect the world from future nuclear action. But throughout, you've got this really understated question of personalities and how they question their world. That's ongoing, and I feel that that's the real theme of the book. The fact that there's a post-apocalyptic world isn't really gone into. We know that there has to have been nuclear devastation. It's described, but only in passing. And all the cities were flattened. And what happened to them after that, we learn nothing. It's a very small focus of this future world that we get in the long tomorrow. But still, like I said, in many ways it's almost more of an American literature feeling book than it is science fiction. The post-apocalyptic is subtle. The examination of people and what they want and what they do and how they do it, that is also exceptionally subtle. Really enjoyed the writing style. Enjoyed the speculative nature of it. Was confused by a lot of the Christianity. There is a lot of Christianity. And I don't know much about the religion, so at times I was a bit confused. But in terms of using a fundamentalist religion in a post-apocalyptic scenario, I think this is probably the favourite book I've ever read. It's like I loathed A Canticle for Leibowitz, and I've read a few other ones where it tends to make me impatient. And most of the movies I've seen I didn't think were very good either. But this has got to be the best use of it I've seen so far, and the most convincing use of it as well, because they explain that the reason why basically all of America is now fundamentalist Christian is because when the cities went down, technology fell down, manufacturing no longer could continue because it relied on the social structure, and without that, the people who were best adapted to continue to survive are those who were already living very close to nature with very little technology. And that makes sense. I like the way that it does make sense in the context, because that's something that is very often glanced over in post-apocalyptic scenarios. So yeah, there's actually very little that I didn't enjoy about this book, and I do thoroughly recommend it. And thank you for watching. Comment if you've read it. It seems lots of people have. And tonight I'm going to see what they think of it. Have a great day.